focuses on innovative mechanisms for fighting corruption and improving competition. One of the crucial mechanisms to combat high-level corruption is ensuring transparency in the beneficial owners and accessibility of the data concerning public procurement. Public procurement, beneficial ownership transparency was one of the key issues and topics discussed on good governance forums that we previously organized. So we are continuing this direction, and it was actually one of the recommendations that Georgia and candidate countries received from the European Commission and European Union in the previous stage, and it's continuing this stage. So reforms in the area of de-oligarchization, fighting corruption, and accountability mechanisms is still one of the most important topics that is ongoing, and we will have the opportunity to discuss this on a very interesting panel with quite strong experts in this field, and I'm happy that we have this panel today. I would like to introduce Ms. Paula Perez, Senior Program Officer from the Open Government Partnership, which is one of the co-sponsors and supporters of Good Governance Forum 2024 and the previous forums. And I would like to express my gratitude, and on behalf of IDFI, thank you for supporting us and being with us. And please, floor is yours. Please introduce our panelists, and I wish you a very interesting discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Georgi. It's really a pleasure to be here, and thanks so much to IDFI for organizing this event and for bringing together this excellent panel. I think you're going to hear very interesting perspectives from different perspectives and approaches about procurement and beneficial ownership transparency. So my name is Paula Perez. I work with the Open Government Partnership. We're a partnership of 75 countries and more than 100 local members. And at the core of OGP is a domestic dialogue between government and civil society, who co-create a set of commitments in specific policy areas that are locked down in action plans, and those action plans are then monitored by our independent reporting mechanism. So OGP members in the Eastern Partnership have really been very active during all these years and very engaging. So it's really a pleasure to be here and have perspectives from Georgia, from Ukraine, and beyond. The fight against corruption has really been a key topic in OGP since the start, since its founding in 2011. And it continues to be in our 5-year strategy that we have recently co-created with all the open government community, and where we've heard anti-corruption remains truly relevant for the community. Tackling corruption in procurement, as Georgi was saying, where most of the public funds are spent in countries all around the globe, is really a key priority, because this is a sector that is traditionally very prone to corruption. And more than 80 countries in OGP are committing to advance open contracting, both at the country level and at the local level. And tackling the issue of anonymous or shell companies that are used to hide ill-gotten money is really another key priority that we see, and where 38 governments have committed to advance beneficial ownership reforms in the partnership, with Ukraine and Armenia really leading the way towards BO transparency. Standards have emerged in these two areas, and we're going to hear from the Open Contracting Partnership and from Open Ownership on these developments and how they have been implemented across different countries. And these standards really look at how we can publish the data to make it usable for journalists, for civil society, and for citizens to improve oversight. And we have also seen countries like, for instance, Slovakia, who have started their journey on beneficial ownership transparency in the procurement sector in particular. So requesting companies that are doing business with the state to disclose their beneficial ownership information, and have then expanded this to other sectors. So there's really an interesting intersection between these two themes that I would like also the panelists to go through during their interventions. Today's discussion can seem really technical. We're going to talk about standards, about principles, about guidance, how to implement all of that. But it's really not just that, right? And I would really encourage all of us to try to keep this in mind during the panel and during the conversation. If you look at investigative journalists and how they have been using beneficial ownership data to unmask corruption, or how beneficial ownership information became so important in the aftermath of Russia's invasion of Ukraine to apply the sanctions, or how government offices are using procurement data in order to make their procurement processes more efficient and more inclusive. We were before hearing from the gender panel on the importance of inclusive processes and mainstreaming gender. And one of the innovations that we see here is how beneficial ownership data from companies can really make those processes more inclusive in terms of including business-owned or business-led companies and providing more opportunities for their engagement in procurement processes. Or if we see at how civil society is integrating this data in order to unmask conflicts of interest. That's another very important use that we see. So it easily becomes clear why this discussion is so timely and so relevant, and it goes beyond the technical aspects. And why we also need to sustain these efforts and really raise ambition and political support for these reforms, because this is a key concern also for citizens. And it's one of the key drivers of citizens' mistrust in government, and the key driver of inequality around the globe. So I'd encourage us to keep all this in mind during the discussion. But now, yes, let's go ahead and start with the panel. Let me first go to Georgia. I would like to hear from Georgia's experience. We have here Kaha Demetreshvili, and I'm really sorry if I mispronounce your last name. He's the deputy chairperson of the State Procurement Agency of Georgia since 2014. So Kaha, if you can share what has been Georgia's experience and the progress you've been making on public procurement, that would be very interesting. Thank you so much.
Well, warm welcome to all guests, actually, of my country, to Sakartvelo. The name of the country is Sakartvelo. Actually, the beneficial ownership, mine beneficial ownership, will be that I will be student and I will learn from your experiences more and learn from the best European or international practices regarding the latest innovations. But I will be more than happy to brief the audience on the ongoing, let's say, Georgian reforms agenda. Well, 5 years ago, we started the ambitious reforms agenda in order to be in line with the EU acquis. So EU actually, to be honest, there are a series of the very much difficult directives to be approximated. Not only on the generation 2014 on the actually government procurement, but also on different others like energy efficiency or defense and security. So in this regard, we've faced a lot of challenges as a lot of EU member states even. A lot of EU member states are not fully aligned all EU directives, especially on e-tools. This was a huge challenge, like a ground for our reforms agenda. We have a local context. Any kind of reforms should be designed and run. I strongly believe that should be designed and run in accordance to the local context. Local socio-economic development, local political context. Even for my country, it was very much important, our legal tradition, and legal something. My country has 3,000 years ago, we have drafted the laws and rules and regulations, and even legal tradition is very much different than EU directives. So we cannot transpose the EU directives directly, we cannot copy-paste like many countries do. It's absolutely impossible. We have different, let's say we have strong focus on the secondary legislation, we have soft laws, very much important, and human capital, level of the human capital is different on one hand. On other hand, we have a lot of, we had actually, when we started the reforms agenda, we had a lot of other, let's say, advanced positions like totally electronic governance system, electronic government procurement system from 2010, and very much advanced e-governance, I would say, and e-government services in my country. We have a highest level of literacy in my country. In the Soviet, among the post-Soviet Union republics, we were the first republic on the level of education, high-level education, scientific degrees, and so on. We have total coverage in the country of the internet. All our businesses are totally, let's say, computerized, and they're benefiting from the great e-services from the Ministry of Finance or Ministry of Justice or from others. So we have different context. We had a different context. Well, the revolutionary decision was proposed by my agency to the government and parliament that we decided to cancel, imagine 34 different legal acts on the primary legislation, 34. Now it's cancelled, and we have now just one single new public procurement law adopted by the parliament last February. Now the next pillar of our reforms agenda was to have a 24 decrees, new decrees of the agency and 9 government decrees. So new pieces of the secondary legislation, and we are now intensively drafting them in order to be, let's say, to fully design, to fully integrate the whole, let's say, legal landscape, I would say, to fully revolutionary change the legal landscape. In parallel, we are drafting a lot of bylaws, soft laws, guidelines, manuals, and I am more than proud that maybe first in the region we have a great manual on the sustainable public procurement or green public procurement. We have, with support of EU for Environment and UNEP, with support of GIZ and German federal government, now just yesterday, we launched the new huge guideline on energy efficiency public procurement. So now to clearly present our strategy. So we have 3 pillars of our, let's say, knowledge exchange. This is a piece, the public procurement law on the first level, then pieces of the secondary legislation, and then pieces of the soft law. Then we have now designed a program for the public awareness campaign. We have an annual roadmap for to run the public awareness campaign. Unfortunately, we have up to 5,000 contracting authorities, imagine, in my country. And this is a next challenge. It's not actually adequate to the sizes of our economy, but according to the law, everybody, each organization, even, let's say, local civic organization, if they are spending 1 penny from the budget, according to the definition, they became the contracting authorities, and they have to run open public tenders or open procedures. So we have to reach, firstly, the public sector, let's say, stakeholders. And then we have special roadmap in order to reach our businesses. Up to 70,000 economic operators are trading with the government on the daily basis. Among them, 3,000 companies from the 83 different countries from all 5 continents. The Georgian, let's say, ecosystem are very much open and transparent and free. This is the next point of our roadmap. And last but not least, actually, point is development of the human capital, human capacity development issues. We have actually, we are running the training center under the agency. And this training center has an ambitious program to develop the new training program, also in accordance of the EU standards. We have 15 new modules. EU has adopted the professionalization framework under the public procurement, and with support of USAID EGP program and some European experts, we have drafted and we have already in place the new 15 modules. I'm inviting USAID other programs, NGP or LGP also. Now we are in the process of adaptation, customization, piloting them, and from September we will run a lot of training sessions for our, let's say, local municipalities, local entities, and the central government bodies. So next year will be, let's say, revolutionary start. So next January should be the fully new ecosystem, new legal landscape. And the very last words, so we are spending up to 11% of the GDP. And if you, let's say, and 64% of the whole budgetary expenditures are coming or running via public procurement in this country. So many thanks at this stage.
Thank you very much, and thanks for sharing the details and some of the main points on this new legal landscape, but also on the green procurement side, which is something that we have increasingly been seeing across some countries that implementation is starting there as well. So I'll now turn it over to Vladimir Tarnay. He's the Senior Manager for Eastern Europe and Central Asia and the Balkans for the Open Contracting Partnership, OCP, a key partner for our organization as well. And can you give us an overview of mechanisms to fight corruption in the public procurement sector, and some regional perspectives or insights that you could share? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paula. Thank you, IDFI, for organizing this wonderful event and giving an opportunity to speak. Today, I would like to share some my observations in the field of innovations in public procurement and explain some rather technical approaches that help to fight corruption and improve competitiveness. Without further ado, I will probably start from the most anticipated topic, and that's the implementation of AI. Many of you may wonder how can it contribute to the domain of public procurement. And literally last week, government of Albania made first steps for introduction of AI. They included it into the law on public procurement. And there's still not much clarity about the depths and technical approach, but what we can see so far is that they want to use AI to determine estimated values for goods and standardize technical specifications, standardize criteria for goods and services. And everyone who used ChatGPT or Bard or Copilot, I believe most of you had, know that LLMs and AI is quite good when you explore the general topic. But the more you get into technical details, the more AI start making things up and is getting a bit like delusional or starts hallucinating. And that's why governments has to be very, very cautious in terms of implementing this approach. But what we can all agree upon is that the technology is heavily based on and depends on the availability of data and quality of data. And in this regard, OCP helps governments to not only publish their procurement data, but also improve the quality of data and standardize that. And we developed OCDS, Open Contracting Data Standards, that basically is focused on improving the quality. And as always, we are happy to extend our support to Public Procurement Agency of Georgia and provide our technical assistance and support. Kaha, you can always count on us. Speaking about improvement of data quality, another good improvement is on the way in the public procurement system of Ukraine, Prozoro. Just at the beginning of this month, the government has approved a strategy for procurement reform for the upcoming years. And among all the other things, there's a focus on digitalization of tender specifications, tender proposals, and machine readability of tender documentations and the requirements and the budget estimations will significantly ease the life of both buyers and suppliers, I hope. But what's most important that it will improve opportunities for automized evaluation and scrutiny of documents. And also, I wanted to highlight one experience from Kazakhstan. There's a project called Red Flags AI with a very peculiar mechanics that proved to contribute to both to fight corruption and to improve competition. And I'll briefly try to explain the logic behind it. One of the biggest problems in Kazakhstan, as in many other countries, is non-competitive procedures. At some point of time, about more than 50% of all the procedures were done via non-competitive procurements. And this particular team built a tool that basically analyzed the procurement field and started labeling procurement goods that were procured under competitive procedures as so-called competitive goods. And if any procurement agency would buy procurement goods under non-competitive procedures, this system would generate a short market analysis and a letter with the requirement either to cancel such procurement and reissue it under competitive procedures if possible, or to use competitive procedures next time. And it proved to be to have a relevantly good effect. About 20-25% of buyers improved their competition KPIs, and I believe it creates like a good, strong incentive for buyers to utilize competitive procurement procedures. At OCP, we also invest heavily in the development of analytical infrastructure based on the procurement data, of course, and just to help stakeholders to extract insights out of procurement data and improve their decision making. We supported the development of business intelligence tools across many regions. Basically, it's a set of dashboards which provides an opportunity to receive 360-degree overview of procurement field and visually follow certain use cases for buyers, suppliers, decision makers. With this tool, just in a couple of seconds, literally anyone can, free of charge, get a quite deep analysis on procurement field and receive answers to such questions. Let's say, what is the average price for, let's say, 1 kilogram of potatoes across the country, or what's the average price for certain medicine, and in certain region in a given month or a year, or who are the main buyers or who are suppliers, and get detailed information and profiles of such entities. and obviously have an understanding of which procedures were used and so on. So such tools already exist in Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and soon one will appear in Uzbekistan as well. And whenever machine-readable data on public procurement appears in Georgia, we will be happy to create such tool for Georgia as well. Today, during practical workshop, I will show how it works. So bear with us till 5, and you'll see how it works in practice. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Vladimir, and thanks for also sending the small advertising for the workshop. We hope everyone can take part in that. And also for putting out there the importance of digital technologies when we're talking about procurement or transparent procurement processes, including e-procurement, but also for highlighting the importance of quality of data, especially when it comes to the use of AI. And I would add to that the importance of the governance of AI around it, and the human systems that are around the implementation and deployment of AI systems in procurement. And we are seeing in the context of the EU, the discussions around the AI Act, which has recently been approved. So I think these are all intersections between the different agendas, anti-corruption, digital, that we really want to also underscore. Okay, so now let's hear from Victor Nestulia. Victor has joined us remotely. Thank you so much. He's the head of the DREAM project office, working also with the Open Contracting Partnership. Victor leads OCP's support to Ukraine's reconstruction post-Russian invasion, and is the co-founder and former chair of Ukraine's Rise Coalition. So Victor, of course, Ukraine made great progress on transparent public procurement and inclusive public procurement with the introduction of ProSoro and DoSoro, and can really become a strong example of transparent and accountable reconstruction using the DREAM system, which is also part of Ukraine's recent OGP action plan. Could you tell us a little bit about it and provide some insights from your experience in Ukraine?
Thanks a lot for the invitation and opportunity to share what we're now doing to support Ukraine. And indeed, Ukraine was one of the champions in open contracting with the launch of ProSoro, providing everyone sees everything principle and complete disclosure of contracting data throughout the whole cycle, from procurement planning to contract implementation, including every payment. But with the full-scale invasion of Russia, we have another big challenge. As of today, there are more than 250,000 infrastructure objects that are either completely destroyed or partly damaged. You probably know from news that some of the municipalities are completely leveled to the ground. And as of February last year, World Bank, together with European Commission and the government of Ukraine, estimated that the need to rebuild Ukraine 1 year ago was $411 billion US. So imagine that we have to properly plan, properly prioritize, and implement thousands or dozens of thousands of projects for tens of billions of dollars. There are so many challenges, starting from capacity on the local level, human capacity, what Kaha was mentioning. It's always a challenge when you work with any system, not only governmental systems. But then for us, it's a challenge to identify funding for that. Obviously, Ukraine won't be able to pay for its reconstruction from the very beginning. We are already doing it within national budget, and Ukraine is now one of the biggest contributors to the reconstruction. And of course, we all hope that eventually Russia will pay, and we will be able to seize those assets that are frozen abroad. But in the middle term, we will need to coordinate with lots of international partners, with European Union, other G7 countries, with international financial institutions, technical assistance projects, and so on. And somehow we will need to structurally deliver Ukrainian need to the reconstruction and make sure that any partner could transparently identify where they want to contribute, what projects they want to support, and follow how everything is implemented. So for that purpose, together with the government of Ukraine, we as Open Contracting Partnership, with support of multiple civil society organizations and international partners, launched a project called DREAM, or Digital Restoration Ecosystem for Accountable Management. Initially, this was envisaged to become a digital end-to-end system to manage reconstruction. So I already mentioned those 250,000 infrastructure objects that were damaged or destroyed. We were thinking that we will, face and tackle that challenge. But now we a little bit, let's say, evolved with our thinking, because what is the difference between rebuilding a school that was hit by a Russian missile from constructing a new school in, let's say, western region of Ukraine, or building a new road, new bridge, new sports stadium, any public infrastructure? So right now we are, together with the government of Ukraine and international partners, are designing and implementing new approach to public investment management. And DREAM becomes a single project pipeline for public investments in Ukraine and a tool to help with project preparation, project appraisal, and further implementation of monitoring of project implementation. It's very, complicated to explain what DREAM is within like 5 minutes, but in general, it's a system that helps local community, let's say, to plan any infrastructure investments, starting from problem statement, understanding how to solve this problem in a best way, with capital investments, what technical solutions to identify, conduct, let's say, social environmental assessment, make sure that all inclusivity and gender equality and other aspects during the design of the project are considered, that we have all the data about, for example, land rights, design documentation, permission, city planning documentation, and so on. So any partner, whether it's Ukrainian funding source or international partner, can, on one hand, make informed decision on their investments, and on another hand, DREAM follows implementation stage, linking contracting processes, every payment, fixation of works planned and actually delivered, and like for citizens, pictures of what's happening on the construction site. So end-to-end ecosystem covering the whole process. We always say that if you found out about tender opportunity the day it was published, you already lost, especially in the construction segment, because planning is super important stage. In DREAM, as it's much broader than only tendering procedures, it's the whole contracting cycle from problem statement. We help also businesses to understand what projects are there to be delivered, let's say this year or next year, which projects already under design, which projects already received funding, so they can also better prepare themselves for future competition for this or that opportunity. So this throughout transparency works for various stakeholders, starting from citizens in Ukraine who can understand what their local communities plan to deliver, and they can also contribute to prioritization, what they actually want municipality to deliver. On the other hand, they can see what's already funded and under construction. And this is an important tool to make a connection to temporarily, hopefully, displaced people who, for example, live in western parts of Ukraine or abroad, so they can also monitor what's happening in their municipalities. So they can see that life is coming back, economy is developing, and so on. But also it's an important accountability tool for the whole world. We already have some investment profiles in DREAM. You can check European Investment Bank contribution, Lithuania contribution, Estonia contribution. We work on some other countries. So you can click on their profile and see how much they invested in Ukraine, what projects were actually delivered in Ukraine. So any taxpayer of Lithuania or Estonia already today can see how their taxes were used, that they were used to deliver to citizens' needs, and everything is super accountable. And lastly, as I already mentioned, business, they can know about future opportunities much earlier than tender was published in the procurement system. And linking to beneficiary owners data. Of course, DREAM is connected to beneficiary owners registry in Ukraine. We're now exploring how we can integrate other international registries, speaking with beneficiary owners, open ownership as well about that, because one of our challenges is to make sure that money channeled for Ukrainian reconstruction are properly used, that they don't have any connections with, Russia or any other potential companies or locations that can help to avoid sanctions. But lastly, that there is no opportunity for money laundering and so on. So again, very comprehensive ecosystem that interconnects multiple IT solutions. We're not replacing Prozoro. Prozoro is already integrated into DREAM family, and we continue to deliver on everyone sees everything principle, not only for Ukrainian citizens, but also for the whole world. Thanks.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. Thanks so much, Victor. Really excellent presentation, and the work you're doing in Ukraine is absolutely fantastic. Congratulations again. And thanks for also highlighting the importance of citizen oversight. I think this is something that we all really need to keep in mind. We're doing all this to really create opportunities for citizens to monitor government processes. And also just the point about accountability platform for the world, I think that's a very good way of also summarizing what the DREAM platform will be offering. And you've highlighted integration with beneficial ownership data, and that is also part of the aim of this panel to discuss. Let's now turn to Timon Kip. He's the head of policy and research at Open Ownership. Of course, beneficial ownership has been a key reform, and we've seen progress across different countries, and with some landmark commitments from this region in Ukraine, in Armenia, for instance. And this has been a priority across several global fora as well, from the London Anti-Corruption Summit back in 2016 to the most recent Summit for Democracy, G20 discussions, G7, the EU directives on anti-money laundering that were discussed as part of this forum. So can you give us your perspective on beneficial ownership data and some of the trends that you're seeing?
Sure, and thank you, Paula, and thank you to IDFI for having me. So I work for Open Ownership. It's an organization that provides direct technical support to countries implementing beneficial ownership transparency reforms. So to go from commitments to actual systems with information that's useful and usable. We provide support to over 40 countries on almost every continent in the world, and it's those insights from that work that I'd like to draw on to cover a number of key points about how governments and civil society can practically get to that stage. So the first point I want to make is that the governments that pursue domestic policy objectives are the ones that implement the most effective beneficial ownership transparency reforms. And when I talk about more effective reforms, I mean more useful and usable information that allows data users to have a positive impact. I think many people know that the global anti-money laundering standards set by the Financial Action Task Force have become one of the key policy drivers for beneficial ownership transparency reforms. So often when my organization is approached by a government for technical assistance, it's because of an impending deadline to comply with these international standards. However, as we're discussing today, there are a range of other policy objectives governments can seek to achieve. Knowing who owns and controls companies, I think, is fundamentally about where and how power is held and concentrated, and how it can be held to account. So that means its relevance is across many different policy objectives. So beyond procurement, detecting and investigating corruption, regulating competition, as we're discussing today. It can also be used for a range of by a range of government and also non-government users for example, natural resource governance, improving taxation, but also including, let's say, the monitoring of political party and campaign financing. So, helping safeguard electoral processes and democracy. National security purposes, for instance, helping regulate the ownership of companies that deal in dual-use items, strategic sectors, or, as Paula mentioned in her introduction, enforcing economic sanctions. So we're currently working with a researcher at Oxford University whose research shows that when governments pursue these reforms in response to the top-down pressures of adhering to international anti-money laundering standards, this can often lead to a box-ticking implementation exercise rather than a genuine effort to implement good reforms. So the evidence shows that when a government pursues domestic policy objectives, this leads to the most effective reforms. So we, as an organization, advocate that governments pursue a wide range of relevant policy objectives, and there's, I think, a big role for civil society and others to play to bring the broad range of potential use cases to the attention of government and encourage them to pursue these. So the purpose of the reforms is also critical to providing the legal basis for access. So I think if we're talking about privacy and data protection and access to beneficial ownership registers, registers with a very narrow focus, such as just anti-money laundering, are less likely to necessitate and therefore also justify broad access, including access by civil society and the general public, compared to those with a broad policy objective and purpose anchored in the public interest. This leads me to my second point. Digital projects fail, and the cost of failure is highest when they do not take into account user needs. So in order for central beneficial ownership registers to be the most successful and impactful, governments should involve all prospective data users, both inside and outside government, in the process to ensure they produce information and create systems that cater to specific user needs. So we encourage governments to include any party that can use the information in a productive way to further their policy objectives to be included. So depending on these objectives, this can include not just financial investigative units or procurement agencies, but also mines and minerals agencies, electoral commissions, and so forth. And outside of government, of course, civil society, journalists, researchers, and academics, and businesses. So these should be included throughout the process. We've seen many countries where the sort of user needs is an afterthought, and then there's multiple years of legislation and the creation of systems that they then want to use in a certain way, but either of how the data is prevented or accessible, or a small detail in the law may prevent the use that the government had envisioned in the first place. I think there's also a big risk that when various government agencies all start collecting information separately for their own purposes, like multiple agencies can end up with potentially conflicting information about the beneficial ownership of the same corporate vehicle. So that makes it very difficult to say if one is inaccurate and the other is accurate, if they're all using different definitions and standards. So I think the most effective reforms are the result of a whole of government approach to collecting, verifying, sharing, and using the information. This brings me to my third and almost last point. Standardization matters to ensure data is useful and usable. So almost all the use cases of beneficial ownership information, including a procurement sanctions, require it to be combined with other information. This can be, as I mentioned, procurement data or other beneficial ownership data from other countries, to understand transnational corporate ownership structures. In order to be able to do this, the interoperability of information is key. Open standards for data, like the Open Contracting Data Standard that Vladimir mentioned, or the Beneficial Ownership Data Standard that my organization has developed and has been implemented but in the region in Armenia, go a very long way to ensuring interoperability. However, the policy, legal, technical standards, including around legal definitions, verification of information, even access to information, also need to align. So we see many examples in countries where even where the data exists and is of relatively good quality, different countries cannot use and rely on each other's data. So, like in the EU, someone filing a declaration in, let's say, Latvia, but of a corporate structure that spans multiple EU countries, the Latvian register wouldn't be able to rely on the information from the other member states just because of the differences in the collection and registration of information. So while we have seen some convergence in recent years, I think especially on the sort of like policy and legal front, I think there's still a huge amount of work to be done here. And I think ensuring data is well structured is probably the lowest hanging fruit, where the easiest gains can be made. And then, finally, I think my last point is that following the implementation gap, I think there is an emerging data use gap. There's a big gap between the commitments countries have and the actual implementation of central registers, which is sometimes referred to as the implementation gap. But where central registers do exist, the information does not appear to be used to its full potential. We recently conducted 6 months of research looking at beneficial ownership data use. And across the world, there are many interesting examples of the information being used for a range of purposes. And I think the most interesting and effective examples of data use are predominantly outside government. I think there's still a lot of progress to be made for governments, for governments especially, to not just collect the data, but also use it. And when they use it, not just reactively, but also in a proactive way. So I think the example that Victor just mentioned with Dream is a very good example of this, to ensure that the reforms reach their maximum potential. With that, I'd like to conclude and hand it back to you, Paula. Thank you.
So much, Stephen, and congratulations on the great work that Open Ownership is doing, supporting so many countries across the globe. And also thank you for really highlighting the point about the implementation gap, as well as the gap in terms of data use. So that's, of course, something crucial, right? When we disclose the data, what happens after? And how do we involve different stakeholders in the use of that data, but also create feedback mechanisms for users to be able to provide insights about the data that we're publishing and be able to use it in a good way. So that is an excellent segue, and that is why I left Isabel for the last but not least intervention. Isabel Adam is the analyst at the Government Transparency Institute, and you are involved in various different research projects looking at corruption in public procurement, but focusing on the data use, right? On using big data for analysis. So if you can give us your perspective on that and what you're seeing, what are some of the challenges? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And thank you so much for the invitation. Pleasure to be here. So I will try to keep it brief so that we have more time for discussion left. And I think a lot of points I wanted to make were actually already mentioned. So I will just try to echo what I can agree with based on my experience working with procurement data. At the Government Transparency Institute, we have for the past 10 years scraped procurement data from all over the world, from all kinds of government websites, building data sets, putting them into standards like the Open Contracting Data Standard, and analyzing them using a corruption risk analytics method, similar to what you mentioned to the example of Kazakhstan. So using different red flags and trying to see what are the patterns emerging when we look at big data as a whole, where do we see institutional and systemic corruption risks. And as part of building the open tender platform, we put together data sets from all of the EU countries and a few additional countries, including Georgia now. We've included as well an analysis of I think around 400,000 tenders. So looking at different indicators, trying to see what is the level of transparency, what is the level of integrity that we can see, and break it down into sectors. We can analyze the markets, even going down to the individual level of buyers and suppliers. So working with this kind of data, of course, we have learned a lot what it means to have good procurement data, and I think we can learn from that what it will take to use beneficial ownership data as well, and to integrate it into corruption risk assessments. I think I will not go into the technical details here, but what we should think about is what to use this kind of analytics for. I think so far we've seen two main uses. One is to do risk assessment, for example, on country level, but also going down to different regions, different sectors, identifying what kind of projects or what kind of works to monitor. For example, the European Investment Bank is using this kind of measurement framework to identify where to audit. And the second main use of this kind of data analytics is for policy advice. So, for example, evaluating whether a reform has had the impact that wanted to be achieved. Like these big legal reforms we have in Georgia, we could see beforehand what's the corruption risk, and afterwards has it decreased, or what might be the loopholes, or where might be areas that need more attention policy-wise. So yeah, this is the promise of big data, and I think as we get more and more data, we should try and see how to harness it. What we have seen in like looking at all different kinds of countries, data publications, there is still a lot of issues. I think in 4 main areas. The first one is the availability of data. So many times we go on a website looking for a contract or for a tender process, and we find a PDF or a text file, which is not very useful if you want to build a big database, or you need more sophisticated tools to extract the data from that. Then many countries have HTML, you can scrape that, that's already better. And of course the best is if we have like downloadable files in CSV or JSON, what also OCP is advocating for. This would be ideal, but actually in many countries we are not there yet. That's about availability of data. The second one, I think it was also mentioned, is the scope of data. What the DREAM project, for example, is doing is covering the whole process from actually deciding about procurement, the tender documents, till the implementation, which is usually lacking. In many cases, we don't have information whether a contract was implemented in time and to the agreed terms. So this is about the depth of the data. Then there's also the scope of data. Many times is limited because of thresholds, like legal thresholds, under which if a contract value is under a certain value, it doesn't need to be published. But I think in Georgia, I checked, it's quite low, around 2,000 euros or something, above which a contract has to be published. In the EU, it's way higher. So actually, we need to understand what does our data actually cover and what is hidden. And the last point is about data quality. So how many missing fields are there? Are there errors? Can we detect them? Even if we look at the EU, in many countries, I think, I just checked yesterday, in Sweden, Finland, we have missing values of the mandatory fields that is up to 30%. So also the quality of data needs to be ensured. These are some of the issues that we found. So what does it really need to have a comprehensive and robust data structure that allows us to use these analytics and rely on them? I think in the first place is the legal framework, which needs to be in place with low reporting thresholds, with the same regulations applying to different kinds of bodies, only making exceptions where it's really justified, like if it's in the interest of national security, but not overusing that. Secondly, we need the resources and skills to use data, which is on the one hand the technical infrastructure, the statistical skills, but then we also need the users. I think what the last colleague was mentioning, that there's no use of data and analytics if nobody is using it in the end. So if we don't have anyone who understands what it means or uses it for accountability, then what's the point? So we need trained users and we need feedback loops integrated in the process. and actually keeping them in mind while building the types of platforms that we are proposing. And I think the last point is to highlight what good data needs to have is a good scope, good depth, quality and availability, and lastly to be interoperable so that we can integrate, for example, beneficial ownership data into procurement data and thereby cross-check and even improve the analytics that we can do. And I think we will talk more about it. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Isabel. And certainly the point about interoperability of data, I think, is one that came across pretty prominently. And I would like to go back to all of you and do a quick round to see if there are any further thoughts that you would like to share on that in terms of for those reformers that are driving these reforms. And we have Mr. Caja here who's working in government on this. What are some of those key steps that you think are crucial in order to implement these reforms well? And of course, Caja is focusing more on the procurement side, but if there are any plans on beneficial ownership, also it would be great to hear. And then we'll do a quick round with all the panelists so to hear your thoughts on this question. And then we'll open it up to the public for questions. So as much as possible, please, let's try to have this round of interventions be very brief so that we can then open it up. Thank you. Yeah, would you like to start? Yeah.
Okay. Actually, in order to focus on the panel topic, right, it was my general introduction, I'd like to share with the colleagues, the Georgian story. I guess it's a success story of the monitoring and control and, let's say, preventing corruption risks, I would say. Well, we are a single public procurement authority operating under the direct supervision of the Prime Minister and Cabinet. So we are not part of any line ministry. Firstly, why I'm saying this, we are part of the, let's say, still we are part of the whole maybe anti-corruption ecosystem of the country. We are in close collaboration with the anti-corruption agency under the State Security Service, with the investigation service of the Ministry of Finance. And now we established the collaboration links with the newly established Anti-Corruption Bureau. So this is a specific, let's say, ecosystem enacting, I would say, anti-corruption operations. And sure, we have collaboration with the prosecutors' offices at the municipal level and the general prosecutor's office, helping them, supporting them, providing classified information, and so on and so on. But according to the Georgian legal framework, we have power for administrative punishment and proceedings. What does it mean? As I mentioned, up to 4,700 many contracting authorities, according to law, it's mandatory condition to have a tender committees, and we are, let's say, issuing administrative punishments and proceedings and cases, opening against each member of the tender committee. It makes us very much powerful. This is one of the elements of the, let's say, fighting irregularities, I would say, and not corruption. The second is that the biggest department at my agency is the monitoring department. We have special task forces. A few years ago, we developed a special monitoring methodology, unique in the region, I would say. We do not call red flags in this country. We are calling them risk factors. And based on this methodology, we have different 27 for open tenders and up to 15 for the single source procurement cases. And we have very low threshold, you mentioned, Isabel, but also for your kind attention, in my country, we have very few threshold for single source or sole source or direct procurement, it's the same. But still, each transaction, each case are in the system, Isabel. Everything, we have special module with, if you are even procuring in the school, you are paying 1 penny for 1 pencil, and this contract, this payment, everything, this case in the system. Right? Okay. And what I am saying, and based on those, let's say, two fields, right, two type of operations, right, open tendering and then single source procurement transactions, all together we have annual data for 250,000 transactions each year, and we have this data in the system. And the system, each night we have special software, special algorithms, and for each morning, starts of a monitoring department is dividing to the task forces the most risky cases, and the special task forces launched the ongoing, even ongoing monitoring. It's a new innovation, not in the very initial stages of the procurement phases, we are being involved. So we have what we have, according to law, we can issue the letter, we can issue the investigation, we can launch the case, and if something very wrong, so there are just two types, right? Or either administrative irregularities, either criminal something. So regarding the very criminal, let's say, cases, we, as I mentioned, we have we are cooperating, and we are obliged to, it's our commitment to share the case with the special agencies, let's say, fighting corruption. But still, let's say, with support of donor community, without support of donor community, each year we are running analysis of what happened. But still 99%, believe me, 99% of some irregularities or mistakes are because of lack of the knowledge or skills, and not because of corruption intentions. Next point is prevention. How the Georgian electronic government procurement system is functioning from 2010, and among other, let's say, transparent operations. So we believe that we are each year, each month even, we are modernizing the system with the new services, new modules, new elements, new even actions, in order to prevent any corruption risk. So this is so as I see, our main function is also prevention of any schemes, let's say. We are trying to cancel, to delete any option even for any corruption deal. But mostly under the framework of the complex reforms the Georgian government has introduced the e-signature concept, but for resident companies only. For non-resident companies, it's free. Absolutely, yeah, in order to actually ensure the competition. So for those 3,000 foreign or non-resident companies, absolutely there are no rules. But still, introducing of the e-signature, we are trying to, let's say, to reach the situation where any civil servant should meet the businesses. So in my country, sure, you can open the tender, you can participate from the Thailand or Taiwan, you can win, you can sign the contract, you can run, and you can receive the money from our state treasury. We have no cash flow in this country, colleagues. Everything is running via e-payments, invoices, via State Treasury and National Bank of Georgia. And you will receive money, that's all. So no any contact, no any visual contact, no any face-to-face meeting, nothing. So everything, we are trying to ensure the whole cycle of electronic, let's say, circulation. But in the final point, how many, 5 or 6, Alex, right? 7 years ago, we initiated the reform of centralized procurement, so-called. And we became a so-called, in Europe, those type of institutions are called CPB, Central Purchasing Bodies or Central Procurement Bodies. So, and we have a huge department under the agency running the so-called centralized procurement operations. What does it mean? It means that we have those hundreds of thousands less operations. No any tender committee is dealing. No, now Now the central government, let's believe me, under the Prime Minister, we have interagency commission, and sure, absolutely free of any risks even. And this interagency commission, level of deputy ministers, is making a decision on the centralized procurement. Centralized procurement, and we are procuring thousands and thousands of goods and services and providing. In my country, it's absolutely mandatory. In EU, it's not mandatory, but in my country, any contracting authority can procure any good or services if those goods or services are under the, let's say, central government purchasing roadmap. Each year, on annual basis, the government is issuing the decree, adopting the list of the goods and services to be covered by the centralized procurement. And believe me, this is a huge, huge instrument, huge tool to decrease even any option, any something on the local level to have a deal with somebody. So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing the Georgian experience. I'm sure Georgian colleagues here will have questions for you. Let's do a quick round with the other speakers in the panel. Vladimir, if you would like to go first. Please, 2 minutes so that we can then open it up to the public.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'll try to be brief. I want to contribute on one specific aspect. All we know that data is a new oil, but capacity should be in place to extract it and refine it and use it to good purpose. And it echoed so much what Isabel mentioned, that at the end of the day there should be a user, right? And it goes without saying that we conduct dozens of capacity building activities with civil servants, CSOs, journalists, and others, but it's still not enough. I believe that to reach the scale, we definitely need to integrate real data analysis into the educational process of universities, and there's no way around to work with the ministries of education and pilot such approach with universities. And we tried that out, and it works really well. We launched a couple of specific courses in 2 universities in Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, and students received ability to work with real-time data on real companies and update it on a daily basis. And it turned out to work really, really well. I believe we should work together to scale this approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vladimir. Isabel, please go ahead.
I also just want to share a quick thought, especially now on beneficial ownership data, as it's hopefully becoming more and more. I think what we need to keep in mind that more data, or the risk of being exposed as a corrupt person, only scares you if there's a risk of punishment. So if we can see higher corruption risks, but there's no risk of punishment, then more data or more transparent information will not really lead to impact. So it's also great to hear that you're working with law enforcement agencies and different institutions and offices to actually ensure that there are consequences. I think that's the key point I wanted to highlight, and I absolutely agree with skills development and user training, what was mentioned before.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Victor remotely now. Can you hear us, Victor?
With so many international partners supporting the country. And it often happens that some of them are not focused on local challenges and suggesting some solutions that they tested elsewhere, but not really considered how it should adapt it to Ukrainian context. So first of all, whatever recommendations you receive from organizations like for example, Open Contracting Partnership, which is an international organization, it always good to start with local problems and challenges so we can design them together and understand how we can better solve them on local or national context. And second, it's always about multi-stakeholder planning. we design our solutions jointly with civil society, with government, with international partners, with end users, local municipalities, for example, or businesses. So while designing any approaches, how to tackle corruption using open contracting data or beneficiary ownership data, always engage those stakeholders who will be part of this process at design and later at implementation stage. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Victor. And I think that also reinforces the point that Timon was making about the domestic policy objectives, right? And really working towards achieving those objectives when you're implementing a reform like this. So Timon, would you like to make a comment on this? And also, if you could perhaps make a brief reference to the AML directive discussion in the European Union taking place right now around Directive 6, that would be fantastic to hear from you as well, because we have seen some pushback on beneficial ownership transparency after the European Court of Justice ruling, and now there are ongoing discussions on where the directive will go in terms of access. So if you have any comments on that, that would be great.
Sure. Yes, I'll try my best. Yeah, I think that the biggest discussion. Also, sorry, apparently they're testing the fire alarm here in the background, so I hope the noise won't disturb you. But I'll try to keep going because it's just a
we
test.
We cannot hear it. It's
okay,
fine.
Good. So yeah, I think the biggest discussions on AMLD6 have been about access following the November 2022 Court of Justice of the European Union ruling. I think across civil society and transparency activists, it was largely seen as a major setback. I personally think there was a lot of positive, there was big positive silver lining to the ruling, which was the fact that the court confirmed, beyond any reasonable doubt, a legitimate interest for civil society, journalists, and lots of other parties to access the data. And this is, again, very specifically for the purposes of anti-money laundering. So I think the whole discussion about privacy really forces the discussion on purpose and use cases, right? So I think rather than talking about transparency for transparency's sake, I think it's really talking about access to data, what data and to whom and why to achieve what purpose. And I think, we've seen many countries that have had in the EU that have had registers in place before even, AMLD4, like the procurement register in Slovakia. You see Latvia, who is trying to, achieve a transparent business environment to attract inward investments. These are all sort of broader purposes than just AML. And I think we'll need to see how it goes. But I think if these countries maybe also have a shot at keeping broader access than what is, sort of the minimum that AMLD6 is going to be requiring from member states. And then I'll just say one quick thing is that in the data use research that I referenced, I think it's one of the most interesting examples we found was from Isabel's Institute, the Government Transparency Institute, which was this sort of large-scale risk assessment using procurement and beneficial ownership data. And I think it shows beneficial ownership data and using it in procurement is more than just self-incrimination of political involvement through beneficial ownership disclosure, and it's more about these large-scale risks and irregularities, specific irregularities in declarations that can be valid corruption indicators. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent insights, certainly. So we'll open it up. I saw many of you taking notes and very interested in the discussion. So please go ahead and share your questions. Yes.
Paula, may I ask a question? As I promised, I will be student. I have a question to Mr. Kipe. Simon, right? Kipe. So, Mr. Kipe, what's your advice if country X wanted to introduce the beneficial ownership transparency concept or applications or the real politics or real policy, into the public procurement, let's say, field, what's your main advices for the first steps? Several steps for the strategy, for roadmap, in order to introduce beneficial ownership transparency in the government procurement operations. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your question. Yes, please go ahead. Let's try to make it brief so we can open it up. But I think it's a really good question and something that perhaps also you can follow up with Kaha afterwards, Timon.
Sure, I'll keep it, very brief. I think going back to the main points of my opening statement, I think is really about ensuring that those are going to use the information from procurement agencies and not just, central and national, but also subnational, are included from the very beginning. We've seen countries setting up, interdepartmental beneficial ownership working groups that I think have worked very well in many cases. But I think, it's definitely thinking about that from the very beginning and not after the fact, and not just giving, the responsibility of the reforms to a company registrar that is underfunded, ends up charging for the data in order to fund the reforms, while the entire government has, and by extension the people have the possibility to benefit.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that answer. I'm sure you can also connect after the panel for information. Questions, please. Very impressive. Looks like there's a question there.
I have a question. So my name is Dolly Wittberger. I was a panelist on the previous panel. I would link this discussion to the previous panel that was about gender mainstreaming. I'm here as an international expert on gender mainstreaming and EU integration with UN women, and I've been working on the issue for the last 15 years in candidate countries. I'm coming right to the point. There is one directive that obliges EU member states and gradually also candidates to ensure equal access to goods and services, which includes provisions on public. And there is a very recent EU directive on that makes explicit reference to public procurement and gender responsive public procurement. And also we have a couple of directives under the internal market chapters that refer to inclusive public procurement. And this links to accountable public finance management ultimately, because this is about public funds that are being spent. Now my question is whether, and I think this goes to Isabel and maybe also to the DREAM project, I'm interested because UN Women has been working on gender responsive public procurement specifically, whether, first of all, in the DREAM project, this element has been considered, that there is gender responsiveness in the way how public funds are being spent, and the provisions of the EU would need to be technically embedded in the process of public procurement. And the second question maybe to Isabel. We are looking for facts and evidence how to track gender responsive public procurement. We have 2 member states that have gender responsive public procurement legislation in place. Well, one member state is Spain with the most prominent legislation, but also parts of it in Italy. And we have a non-EU member state that has gender responsive public procurement legislation, that is Switzerland. But there are also other elements. Now the thing is, how do we track it? We have legislation in place, but is there a data system that can track the implementation of gender responsive public procurement? First question. And the other one is DREAM project, most likely, whether this has been embedded in any kind of algorithms or provisions. And we would be very happy to learn from that and apply it also or promote it in other EU candidate countries. Thank you very much.
Excellent question, definitely, both questions. And thanks for also making the link between this panel and the panel on gender mainstreaming. I think those are links that we need to continue making more prominently. Who would like to go first? Isabel? Victor? Okay, let's go with Isabel, who's here, and then we'll go to Victor remotely. Thank you.
Thanks. So, to my knowledge, there's no data set yet that has good, or that we could use with good indicators on gender responsive public procurement, as you probably thought. But there are a couple of indicators that I can think of, and I think that are being tried to build in some countries already. I think the most obvious one is women-owned businesses, which also links to beneficial ownership in the end. So, like seeing, is it women who actually profit in the end? I think other indicators could be linked to like the gender equality of the people involved and the beneficiaries of the project that has been contracted. But to my knowledge, there's no standard yet. But it's a very, very important and I think interesting topic that we should work on more, especially when these directives come in and when member states are starting to implement it. Then it has to be translated into variables that we can track over time.
Yes, sorry for interrupting, but I just wanted to add that it's a recent directive that was adopted in autumn 2023, November, which means member states, EU member states have 2 years time for implementation to get prepared. And I think that it would be fantastic to establish in parallel a system where we can really track it. That has far-reaching implications, not only for new candidates, but for really EU member states. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thanks, Isabel, for those insights. Really, really interesting, good points. Victor, over to you.
Your last remarks was to learn from these lessons and to share them with the European Union. Let's not limit with the European Union. Let's focus on the whole world because we have lots of lessons to share. We as Open Contracting Partnership also worked on gender equity and social inclusion, including with UN Women. We produced multiple reports on how it should embed it to the contracting processes. And indeed, in DREAM, we have a pretty comprehensive framework on gender equality and social inclusion, included, developed together with UN Women support. So we've just received like an updated recommendations on what needs to be embedded. I will not dive deep into methodology. It's pretty complex, starting from a design phase, how we make sure that it's included not only to the, let's say, construction project, but also to the teams that are responsible for project preparation, that they are aware of all these issues and know how to include it to design phase and so on. And of course, later on contract implementation and monitoring phase, how we make sure that actually what was promised is delivered. But the big challenge here is capacity. We can embed any types of frameworks to the system design, but then people should work with that. And of course, again, referring back to what Kaha mentioned in his intro speech, capacity is one of the biggest challenges probably in most of reforms. So while having a nice framework, we now have a challenge how to make sure that people on the ground, like local communities, are capable of applying those frameworks in practice. Thanks. And thanks to UN Women for your valuable input for DREAM design as well.
Thank you very much, Victor. Are there other questions? Yes, please.
Hello, my name is Nato Beroshvili. I represent USAID Economic Governance Program. First of all, thank you very much to all the panelists for your very interesting insight. My question is about, that the procurement databases accumulate a lot of data, which could be used through open data mechanism by businesses, by other governmental agencies, so they can use the data for developing innovative products or other information data products. So my question is about, can you share your experiences regarding open data mechanism being used for procurement data to be shared with whether it's private sector or government stakeholders. Thank you.
Vladimir, would you like to go?
I can provide a couple of examples. The one that I mentioned is the business intelligence tool. I won't talk about that anymore, but maybe we'll highlight a couple of more. One is obviously red flags. The second one probably the comparison of prices. Let's say many countries provide information on price per item comparison, and it enables anyone to collect and gather basically like a market analysis, for certain goods and goods, not services. It works good on goods. It doesn't work on services and construction, obviously. But it has quite decent effect. We've observed such tools pop up in Ukraine, in Moldova, in Kazakhstan and other countries, and in European countries as well. And probably the last I would mention is a valuable piece of information on procurement complaints. Availability of this data in machine-readable format actually enables companies to get a vision or whether they have chances to complain, in their certain particular situation, and it can save a lot of money, both to suppliers and increase trust in the system as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Vladimir. Yes, let's take one more question, and then we'll wrap it up because we're a little bit over the time. But yes, please go ahead.
This is on. Irina from USAID National Governance Program. This is a technical question, but I think a very interesting one from many perspectives. This is to Isabel. You spoke about lack of availability of data based on, for example, you run into PDF files rather than downloadable Excel files. So how do you get around that problem? Do you just mark that as missing data, or is there software that allows you to go forth and still have the data available in your data sets? Thank you.
Thanks. So this is the expertise of some of my colleagues who are building scrapers and building tools that actually can extract information from PDFs. So those are the programmers within the institute. I'm not working on that myself, so I don't know the technical details to all extent. But of course, there are tools that can be used. It's just much harder, much more unreliable. You need much more cross-checks, and it's just more costly to build such a tool. And it needs to be, if you have a PDF that is always in the same format and the fields are always the same, it's easier. But if every, municipality or every local institution uses its own type of format and its own type of document, then it gets very, very tricky. So we've done that. For example, we also tried to use data from legal prosecutions and court cases and really extracting data by hand, transposing it, typing it into an Excel. But compared to what we can do with HTML or downloadable data sets, that's of course much, much easier. Yeah, you're lucky. I can imagine.
Well, that's fantastic. A fantastic closing that also speaks to the importance of implementation of data standards, because in the end, when the data is structured and is machine readable, then it makes it a lot easier in order to monitor those processes and to ensure that accountability and oversight mechanisms are in place, and that can take place in a more friendly and simple way, right? Without the need to build those scrappers and all those tools that can make the data available and machine readable. Thank you very much. Thank you, IDFI, Georgi, and Teona, who couldn't join us today, but really very excellent panel, and thanks to the panelists for your great insights. Georgi.
Thank you very much. Well, we have a transparent lunch over there, and I don't want to prevent you having it and enjoying it. But first of all, I have to express my gratitude. I have to and I'd like to. Victor, thank you very much, especially for your remote presentation from Kiev. It's really much appreciated. Timon, gratitude from Tbilisi, and I hope next time you join us. And Victor, you are always welcome, my good friend. And Kaha, special gratitude. So we have a very long and many years cooperation, very successful cooperation, and I'm really grateful for that. Colleagues, appreciation. And please, once again, join us expressing gratitude to a very good panel. And very interesting, and now enjoy your lunch. Please join us back in the room at 2:10. Thank you very much.
IDFI leadership here, and I can say that it's a very hard closure of the panel because I'm in Kiev and you have your amazing Georgian lunch. So now I'll have to look for some Georgian food here in Kiev to join you virtually. Enjoy your lunch and thanks for a great event.
I'm really sorry for that, Victor, but I hope next time we have the opportunity to have you here in Tbilisi.
Yes, thank you. Bye.
Have a nice day.